Here is the world's creepiest McDonald's. It's called the McBarge, and it's in Vancouver, Canada. Hey, that's close to me. It debuted in 1986 for the World's Fair, and wow, look how nice it used to look. So the McPlan was for it to float the entire world, but interest in it fizzled out, it was just a McNovelty. And the article said you could only reach it by boat, so that's really gonna limit your customer intake. As you can see, it's abandoned. It's been abandoned for 30 years. But the current owners are putting $3 million into the McBarge, and they say the renovation should be done by the end of the year. But look, this article is 1 year old. That means that it should be renovated, right? If it was 1 year. And I know I could have looked this up before making the video, but I like the idea of me not knowing with you. So I'll go do some digging and report back. Hi, I can't wait to show you the McBarge uniforms. They are so cool. It's a sailor costume with a hat and everything. And look, I found this on the Facebook 30 years later and it still fits. And another McBarge employee commented like, oh, I remember the pins and how excited we would get if we broke sales per hour targets. Facebook has so much. So this person was an employee on the McBarge and they said you get a monthly sticker on the lower left to prove that you were still employed. And this is the McBarge acceptance letter. And 2 times on the letter they go, bring 12 quarters for parking. And someone else in the Facebook had an old uniform. And look at the detail, it even has an embroidered M. And it was so packed all of the time that they say it was more like a performance art, like a bartender but with food. And apparently the kitchens were hidden and the food would come out on a conveyor belt. You're not gonna believe this. And the ice cream machine worked. They held the record for selling 800 soft serve cones in an hour. Where's the McBarge today? As you can see, it's docked pretty close to land. They painted it white and they gutted it. It's behind the Imperial Cedar Products sawmill in Maple Ridge. So of course you have to look it up, and people have labeled it a restaurant and left reviews. Fries were a little soggy here. The Facebook page, I found this recent video and it definitely has like behind a sawmill vibe. This is the article everybody was sending me, and it's from March 2020, and they interview the owner. They're looking for the right location, a high traffic spot to anchor the McBarge. This is a reoccurring issue for the McBarge. Zero mention of the Discovery Center, but he does say the McBarge is going to be turned into a seafood restaurant. What about the Discovery Center though? And they say they want the location tied down by last fall, so that didn't happen. As of January 2021, it's still sitting there abandoned and alone. My McBargie. We need a series now. You read my mind, because this is gonna be my weekend project. It just has to be. There's so much. I need to go to bed, but I also need to share these McBarge facts right now. The McBarge is the second floating McDonald's. The first one is in St. Louis, Missouri. And you may not be able to tell from the picture, but this thing is huge. It can serve thousands of customers at one time. And it had conveyor belts that ushered food out from a hidden kitchen. The lair in Blade Trinity, McBarge. When the McBarge was in service, there was this thing called the Tidy Tug that it had. It wasn't even a tugboat, that was just the name. But it just circled the McBarge and it would pick up trash and cups and like burger wrappers and just zoom around picking them up. That was its job. And there's mystery behind this because no one knows what happened to the Tidy Tug. I'll work on a deep dive this weekend. The McBarge is a freaking iceberg. I'm not even done with investigating, but the video is doing really well. People want an update. I'll just tell you what I found out so far, but I'm not done. There's so much. First of all, its real name is Friendship 500. Second of all, the article was way older than 1 year. So a few years ago, the McBarge is getting a ton of publicity because they were trying to turn it into a historical place. It's not a landmark. Pause this and read. It was going to be called Deep Discovery Center. But then, 2017, everything just drops off. Wiki says it was canceled due to weather concerns. That's not enough information to appease me, so I clicked on the link. NewMcBarge.com doesn't even work. The last Twitter post, 2017. Last Facebook post, 2017. I found this other Facebook that's active and they have an email where you can ask questions, and I will. The McBarge is the second floating McDonald's. Now I'm going to tell you about the first. And here it is. And it was called the Riverboat McDonald's. But it's not a riverboat. It's a riverboat sitting on a barge. So I think technically this is the OG McBarge. And the plan wasn't for it to be floating at all. They wanted it to be in the museum under the Gateway Arch. The golden arches under the arch. But the government was like, no thanks. So that's when the plan changed to have it floating right next to the Gateway Arch. Opening day is March 11th, 1980, and it's christened by Judelle Davis, and it did take her 2 tries to break the champagne bottle. This was her husband's 4th McDonald's, and he was the first black McDonald's owner-operator in East St. Louis, and he loved to mentor and help young people. This is Jimmy Williams. He was mentored by Dr. Ben and now owns one of his old restaurants. I have a little bit more left on the McBarge story. In 2003, it was rented out for the movie Blade Trinity. Blade is a human-vampire hybrid who teams up with a group of vampire hunters, the Night Stalkers, to take on Dracula. The McBarge was their lair.
Night Stalkers headquarters is this barge that was a restaurant for Expo 86, and I get to thinking, what if we dragged this barge into port and turned it into our Night Stalkers?
The outside pretty much stayed the same. And on the inside, they removed any of the old McDonald's stuff. The walls were repainted, and they had to build the whole set, of course. In 2004, when they're done with the McBarge, it gets put back in Burrard Inlet to sit alone. December 2004, the movie is released. So how was the film? I'll let Patton Oswalt tell you.
If you just sit and watch Blade Trinity, it's a D-. It just doesn't work. But if you know what they went through to get that movie made, it is an A+. The fact that movie exists puts it above Citizen Kane.
He said Wesley was hard to work with. Howard Meakin, the owner of the McBarge, emailed me. Okay, he said, but I'll read it. If you have time to chat on the weekend, forward your telephone number and I'll give you a call. Cheers, Howard. Okay, I responded. I asked if I could record. I don't know. I don't know when he'll call. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'll let you know. And I'm coming up with some questions. Oh, if you have questions, put them in here. And if you haven't watched the series, watch that first before asking questions so that Okay. Bye. So the World's Fair is over, but Mickey D's cannot find a new location. This goes on for a long time. 4 more years pass, and the McBarge is still in the same spot it was at the expo. And McDonald's is paying $150,000 a year just for maintenance on the closed McBarge. It's been so long that the land is sold to developers, and you know what they do? They evict our McBarge. So this is when the McBarge gets moved to Burrard Inlet, which is only 7 miles away. Oh, and Mickey D's sells the McBarge at this point too. And can we get a close-up? Thank you. Love this. So there the McBarge sits, abandoned and alone for a few decades. It's just sitting there, turning into this. Until it's finally moved to Maple Ridge. They repaint the outside, gut it out, and they made this banner. They really thought something was going to happen. But the Discovery Center never even happened. Now we've come full circle. Next, I want to jump to McBarge 1986. Our World's Fair is like not a thing anymore. This size is so big, 160 acres, and it lasted for months. McBarge was one of 5 McDonald's being built for the expo. Collectively, McDonald's spent $12 million on them. And the McBarge was the McSpecial one. Baby McBarge. And its official name was Friendship 500 because it was the 500th McDonald's to open in Canada. Anyway, it was very popular at the expo. COVID has McTrained me. I'm looking at these pictures going, McDonald's was doing a brand new marketing campaign called Affordable Elegance. At the time, this was considered very fancy and futuristic, with wooden floors and potted plants for an added touch. Oh my gosh, and on the Facebook, I found a real color picture of the Tidy Tug. The Tidy Tug's job was to circle the McBarge and pick up trash out of the water. If the McBarge was so busy, then why did it fail? How did it go from that to this? So we know it was made for the 1986 World's Fair. So when the fair ended, the McBarge closed. And side note, the expo looks incredible.
A full house under the domed roof of Vancouver's BC Place Stadium. Prince Charles and Diana joined 54,000 invited guests and 7,200 performers for the opening ceremonies of Expo 86.
So the McBarge wasn't meant to stay closed. It was supposed to move to a new location. But as the fair is getting torn down, the McBarge just sits there. They were still looking for a new location. Fast forward, now it's 1987. It's still sitting there and it's closed. But why? Why couldn't it be open? McDonald's even had a 40-year lease. But the Vancouver City Council put the kibosh on that and denied their request to continue to operate after the expo. So Mickey D's keeps looking for locations, but all their proposals keep getting turned down. If you think about it, the McBarge is sort of linked to Princess Diana because she was at the Vancouver World's Fair. Here they are formally opening the expo, and they rode the brand new SkyTrain, Car 14. And look at this memorabilia. Canada loves Diana. The princess stole our hearts. Take a look at this dress. At first glance, it might just seem like an 80s dress, but the more I look at it, the more I like it. Look how cool the back is. Oh my gosh, yeah, and Princess Diana fainted. She was touring the pavilions when she suddenly crumpled and fell. An ambulance rushed to her, but it wasn't needed. She was able to walk to the car and they whisked her away. And she was caught as she was falling to the ground. She had been touring for a very long time. It's being rushed from place to place and it was really hot out. It started speculation that she was pregnant. They said she wasn't though. I checked and Prince Harry was already born. This is the renegade Burger King barge which floated away and sunk to the bottom of the Mississippi. It belonged to local oil man Floyd Warman. And this whole thing is a complex called Spirit of the River. In the back was an old World War II minesweeper called the Inaugural, and now it's just an attraction. Next you have BK. It makes sense that it would be on this side, but I'm really not sure. Hard to see, but there was also a heliport. So they're all tied to each other, and there's a Taco Bell barge too, but I'm not sure which one. Cut to the summer of 1993. It's raining and raining. And the Mississippi is rising and rising, making new records every day. August 1st, 1993, the water has risen 19 feet above the flood stage. It's 10:45 p.m. and the park ranger responds to the sound of an explosion at the complex. He gets there just in time to see that the spirit of the river has broken free, and he watches it float off into the darkness. All of it. Crap! More happens. I'll make it right now. Howard Meakin has been trying for so long to make the McBarge happen. The Deep Sea Discovery Center was not the only failed McBarge plan. Enter Sturgeon's on Fraser. It's 2009 and Howard has big plans for the McBarge.
Sturgeon's on the Fraser, a development that would include a fine dining restaurant, a tap house and coffee shop. The 8,500 square foot dock would also include a ticket counter for West Coast Air, moorage for fishing guides, eco tours, and outdoor adventure operators. The developer expects the project, once complete, will become the #1 tourist destination in the area.
They were just waiting on approval from City Council.
We would like to see that the process go through properly, that all the parties that are involved follow the procedures that are in place.
2 years passed, and guess what? Still waiting. This is the development site, and I saw this date of public hearing January 30th, 2012. So of course I looked it up. I don't have time. I'll do the second part like right now. Okay, the January 30th, 2012 public hearing. This was for turning the McBarge from this to this, Sturgeon's on the Fraser. And it was a success! Developer Howard Meakin stood up and raised his fist over his head in triumph following approval of third reading of his floating restaurant at public hearing Monday evening. But that success did not mean he had full approval on the project yet. He still needed to have a long-term lease of the area from the province, make dike improvements, and that's a water thing, and provide engineering and landscaping plans. And it seemed like everyone was on board, even Mayor Ted. February 2012, Howard says he plans to have the restaurant opened in 1 year to 18 months. 2 more years pass. That's 4 years now, and it still hasn't happened. Howard tells the CBC it failed because of pushback due to how loud the planes were and other environmental issues. Bummer. This is the St. Louis OG McBarge. I know it looks like a riverboat, but it's a riverboat sitting on a McBarge. I mean, a barge. The inside is so cool, and you know what it reminds me of? The train on Wild Wild West. Can we get a side-by-side? Yes, same vibes. And here's a cup and a placemat. The world's only floating McDonald's. But not for long. Back to the inside. It could seat 134 people. And 200 more people could sit on the decks outside. Now the prices on the riverboat, those were a few cents more. I mean, you're paying to be on the riverboat. The bar! barge! It was a fixture in the St. Louis area for almost 20 years before closing in the year 2000. McDonald's reason for closing was it was a business decision because the structure was in need of extensive renovation, which was not financially justifiable at the present. But all of the employees were offered jobs at different McDonald's, so yay, happy. It was next to a Burger King barge that floated away and sunk. Okay, this is it. Oops.
The last barge video.
And it's not really even about the barge. I just need to finish the BK barge story about what happened to the inaugural. So when the inaugural slammed into the Poplar Street Bridge, it did sustain some damage. But a tugboat by the name of Mary Burke was able to guide it to a safe spot. This was on the Missouri side of the river. But it didn't end up staying there long because on September 23rd, she leaned onto her side and then she completely sunk into the Mississippi, which is where she still lies today. And when the river is low, she pops out and says hello. That's what all these pictures have been. And wow, I didn't realize how big the ship was. Okay, that's the end. Let's go out with a bang.